The name Amityville. It's pretty much synonymous with a haunted house. You've probably heard the stories. Green slime, oozing down walls, demonic pigs with glowing red eyes, and a family fleeing in terror in the middle of the night. For decades, this story has been hyped up in books and blockbuster films, becoming a legend in paranormal pop culture. But what if the true horror wasn't the house, but the man who lived there? Before all the alleged hauntings and the media frenzy, there was a real-life tragedy. 6 members of a single family, shot to death in their beds. This is the full, unfiltered story of Ronald DeFeo Jr. and the dark path that led him to murder his entire family. It's a story of violence, abuse, and secrets that were hidden behind the perfect facade of a suburban dream home. We're going to get into the lesser-known details of his troubled life, the baffling crime that puzzled investigators, his dramatic trial, and the contradictory stories he told during his final years behind bars. This is the real Amityville horror. On the surface, the DeFeo family was living the American dream. In 1965, they moved into a grand, 3-story Dutch colonial home at 112 Ocean Avenue in the peaceful waterfront town of Amityville, Long Island. The father, Ronald DeFeo Sr., was a successful service manager at his father-in-law's Buick dealership, and he provided an upper-middle-class life for his wife, Louise, and their 5 children. Right there on the front lawn, they planted a sign that read "High Hopes," broadcasting their aspirations to the world. But inside that charming house, a much darker reality was taking shape. Ronald Sr. was a domineering and hot-tempered man, known for lashing out at both his wife and kids. The main target of this abuse was his oldest child and namesake, Ronald DeFeo Jr., born September 26, 1951, and known to everyone as Butch. From a young age, Butch was crushed by the weight of his father's huge expectations and explosive disappointment. He was overweight and shy, which made him an easy target for bullies at school. The abuse he got from his peers was nothing compared to the abuse he suffered at home. His father would demand he stand up for himself at school, but offered no mercy at home, keeping his son on a very short leash. As Butch became a teenager, he started to lash out. The boy who was once bullied became a bully himself. Shouting matches with his father turned into full-on brawls, as son and father, now evenly matched in size and strength, often came to blows. Worried about his increasingly erratic behavior, his parents sent him to a psychiatrist for a bit, but Butch insisted he didn't need help and refused to go. So instead of getting him more professional help, Ronald Sr. and Louise tried a new strategy: appeasement. They showered their troubled son with cash and expensive gifts, including a $14,000 speedboat, just hoping to calm his rage. That tactic blew up in their faces. By 17, Butch was a regular user of LSD and heroin, and had been kicked out of school for his violent behavior. Despite all this, he was given a no-show job at the family car dealership, and a regular allowance from his father, whether he actually worked or not. Butch poured this money into his growing collection of guns, alcohol, and drugs. His behavior became more and more menacing. On one hunting trip, he just casually aimed a loaded rifle at his friend, only to act like nothing happened moments later. In another terrifying incident, during a nasty fight between his parents, Butch pointed a shotgun at his father and pulled the trigger. The gun misfired. The fight ended, but it was a chilling preview of the violence that was on its way. By 1974, Butch's resentment toward his father was turning into something far more dangerous. He felt his weekly allowance wasn't enough and started plotting to steal money from the dealership. The high hopes of 112 Ocean Avenue were about to be destroyed by a storm of rage that had been building for years. In the cold, early morning hours of November 13th, 1974, all the violence simmering inside the DeFeo house finally boiled over. While his family slept, 23-year-old Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. took a .35 caliber Marlin rifle and systematically went from room to room. He started in his parents' bedroom, shooting Ronald Sr., 43, and Louise, 42, as they slept. Then, he moved on to his siblings. He shot his two younger brothers, 12-year-old Mark and 9-year-old John Matthew. He finished his rampage by killing his two sisters, 18-year-old Dawn and 13-year-old Allison. Within just 15 minutes, his entire family was gone. All 6 victims were found lying face down in their beds, still in their nightclothes. His parents were each shot twice, while his siblings were killed with single shots. After the slaughter, DeFeo showered, dressed for work, and gathered his bloody clothes and the rifle into a pillowcase. On his way to the dealership, he dumped the evidence in a storm drain. For the rest of the day, he acted like everything was normal. He went to work, though he left early, saying he felt sick. He spent the afternoon with friends, casually mentioning that he couldn't reach his family at home. Around 6:30 p.m., Butch DeFeo walked into Henry's Bar, a local spot just a short walk from his house. He looked frantic, yelling, "You got to help me. I think my mother and father are shot." A few people from the bar, including his friend Joe Yeswit, went with him back to 112 Ocean Avenue. While Butch waited outside, his friends went in and made the horrifying discovery. Yeswit immediately placed a frantic call to the Suffolk County Police. When officers arrived, they walked into a scene of unimaginable carnage, the largest mass murder on Long Island in recent memory. The bodies were all in a strangely similar position, face down. There were no signs of a struggle, and bizarrely, none of the neighbors heard any gunshots, even though the high-powered rifle didn't have a silencer. At first, police put a distraught Butch into protective custody. He told them a story about a mob hit, blaming a hitman named Louis Fellini, possibly over a grudge from the family business. But as detectives questioned him, his story quickly fell apart. They found an empty box for a .35 caliber Marlin rifle in his room. The supposed hitman, Fellini, had a solid alibi, proving he was out of state at the time of the murders. The inconsistencies kept piling up, and under the pressure of interrogation, Butch's story crumbled. By the next day, he confessed. He told detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." The trial of Ronald DeFeo Jr. kicked off on October 14th, 1975. Almost a year after the murders, the prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Jared Sullivan, set out to prove that Butch was a calculated killer. Meanwhile, the defense, led by attorney William Weber, went all in on an insanity defense. Weber argued that DeFeo was not in his right mind that night. He claimed Butch was legally insane and had a dissociative disorder that made him feel like he was watching the events from outside his own body. The defense's key witness, psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Schwartz, backed this up, testifying that DeFeo was neurotic and heard voices telling him to kill his family. On the stand, DeFeo himself gave a dramatic, if inconsistent, performance. At one point, he claimed, "I killed them all in self-defense." When asked why, he said, "As far as I'm concerned, if I didn't kill my family, they were going to kill me." The prosecution painted a completely different picture. Sullivan portrayed DeFeo not as a man lost to madness, but as a cold-blooded murderer with an antisocial personality disorder. Their expert psychiatrist, Dr. Harold Zolan, testified that while DeFeo was a heavy user of heroin and LSD, he knew exactly what he was doing and understood the consequences. Dr. Zolan argued that it was DeFeo's self-centered attitude, not any delusion, that drove him to kill. The prosecution suggested the motive was a toxic mix of long-simmering hatred for his domineering father and simple greed. DeFeo had actually asked police how he could collect on his father's life insurance policies, a detail the prosecution used to highlight a financial motive. They pointed to his elaborate initial alibi and his efforts to get rid of the evidence as clear signs of a rational mind that knew it was guilty. The jury was left with a battle of psychiatric experts and conflicting stories. They had to decide between the brutal, methodical nature of the crime and the claims of a troubled young man who said demonic voices made him do it. An initial vote revealed that 2 jurors were unsure about DeFeo's mental state. But after reviewing the transcripts of DeFeo's own testimony, the jury came to a final decision. On November 21, 1975, Ronald DeFeo Jr. was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. The judge, Thomas Stark, called the crimes the most heinous murders committed in Suffolk County since its founding. On December 4, 1975, DeFeo was sentenced to 6 consecutive terms of 25 years to life in prison. For Ronald DeFeo Jr., his conviction wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of a lifetime of changing his story and making up elaborate lies. From inside Green Haven Correctional Facility, and later the Sullivan Correctional Facility, DeFeo spent decades trying to rewrite what happened that bloody night. He filed numerous appeals and gave interviews, each story more convoluted than the last. His attempts to get a new trial were denied every single time. His own defense attorney, William Weber, would later get tangled up in the paranormal hype that followed the case, working with the Lutz family, who bought the house in December 1975 and fled just 28 days later, claiming it was haunted. DeFeo himself tried to cash in on the growing myth, sometimes claiming voices from the house made him do it, feeding the supernatural story that was quickly overshadowing the grim reality of the murders. But his most shocking and persistent alternate story was one where he blamed his own family. In a 1986 interview, he claimed his 18-year-old sister, Dawn, was the real killer. He claimed Dawn killed their father, and then their distraught mother, Louise, killed all the other kids before he had to kill his mother in self-defense. This story changed again in a 1992 motion for a new trial. In this version, DeFeo claimed he and Dawn planned to kill their parents together, but that Dawn then killed the younger siblings by herself. He alleged he only killed Dawn in a rage after finding out what she'd done. In yet another version, he claimed he killed his parents out of desperation to end his father's abuse, with Dawn cheering him on, and that 2 friends were there and helped him. These constantly changing stories were always rejected by the courts, which never found any credible evidence to back them up. While some independent investigators have argued that crime scene evidence might point to a second shooter, given the lack of a struggle and the fact that no neighbors heard the shots, these theories have never been proven or accepted by law enforcement. The Suffolk County Police have always maintained that 1 shooter and 1 gun were responsible for all 6 murders. Despite the fame of his case, DeFeo's life in prison was pretty uneventful. He got married and divorced 3 times while locked up. All of his many appeals and requests for parole were denied. The man who murdered his entire family remained a prisoner, not just of the state, but of the web of lies he had spun for nearly half a century. The story of Ronald DeFeo Jr. is a complicated one with so many layers. What do you think was the real motive behind the murders? Do you believe he acted alone? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into famous true crime cases, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Ronald DeFeo Jr. died in custody at the Albany Medical Center on March 12, 2021, at the age of 69. He took his secrets and the real truth of what happened on November 13, 1974, to his grave. The official cause of death was never publicly released. What's left is a legacy of brutal violence and a mystery that still fascinates people. Was Butch DeFeo a cold, calculated killer driven by greed and hate? Like the prosecution said, was he a deeply disturbed young man, a product of a violent home, who finally snapped after years of abuse and drug use? Or was he, as his ever-changing stories suggest, just a pathological liar who couldn't tell the truth, even to himself? The Amityville story will forever be split into two tales: the sensationalized and widely debunked paranormal story of the Lutz family, and the very real, very human tragedy of the DeFeo family. The true horror of 112 Ocean Avenue wasn't a ghost or a demon, but the dark potential that lives inside people, the chaos hidden behind a suburban facade, and the violent rage that ultimately wiped out an entire family, leaving a permanent scar on a quiet Long Island town. The case of Ronald DeFeo Jr. is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we know